शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय
ओम शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय
ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय
ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय
ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय
ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय
ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय
ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
श्री कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्री कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्रीकृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्रीकृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं
श्रीकृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्रीकृष्णं वन्दे
श्रीकृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्रीकृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं
श्रीकृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं
कृष्ण भगवान की जय। During all our considerations earlier on several Sundays, we had occasion to lay emphasis on the fact of self-control as a preconditioning requisite in the practice of any type of sadhana or spiritual endeavor. It was made out that in the process of the restraint of the senses, what is to be done is to abstract the forces of the sense organs from their contact with their corresponding objects and revert the energy of the senses to the source thereof, namely the mind and the Atman inside. But there is another way of self-control which is more glorious and more thrilling, I should say, and more satisfying at the same time. The illustration of this kind of self-restraint is given to us in the Chandogya Upanishad. In the context of the story of a great mastermind, sage Raikwa. Apparently, for our outward look, He was a poor person, unknown to the public, and no one recognized him. He had no belonging except a cart which he himself evidently was pulling. But his power was such that he could absorb all things into himself by a peculiar technique of meditation. He practiced a vidya, an art known as Samvarga. This vidya is known as Samvarga Vidya, the all-absorbent meditation. What does this mean? In this connection, the story goes in this manner. There was a king called Janashruti. He was a very famous charitable person. He gave so much of gift, so much charity he did, that his glory spread everywhere. Not only in his kingdom, the Upanishad says his glory rose like a flaming fire even up to the skies. One day, the story goes thus. Perhaps during the summer season, he was reclining on the terrace of his palace. At that time, two flamingos, birds, were flying across. It is told us that these flamingos were only certain sages who took that form and were flying across. The birds were flying over the head of this king who was seated or reclining on the terrace of his palace. One bird was ahead, another was to the rear. The bird to the rear said, addressing the one that is in the front, "O foolish one, O blind one, don't destroy yourself. Don't you know the glory of this King Janashruti is rising to the skies like a flame of fire, and it will burn your wings if you cross it. Be careful." This bird, who heard this glory of a person called Janashruti, retorted back, "Oh, King Janashruti of great glory you speak of. Who is this great Janashruti?" As if he is equal to Raikwa with a cart. This remark by one of the birds was heard by the king, to his utter humiliation, because he was respected everywhere as a great man whose glory spread even to the skies. What more can we say about his greatness? Now there is some information given to him that there is someone greater than he, in comparison with whom he is nothing. Oh, he is, after all, who is this Janashruti? As if he is equal to Raikwa with a cart. This discussion between these two birds upset the mind of the king, and he did not sleep the whole night. Kings are generally woken up in the morning by music, band, and the songs of the bards. So early morning the bards started singing, "Oh great Maharaja, the Raja, wake up," and all that. The king immediately said, "Stop, whom are you praising? As if I am equal to Raikwa with a cart. Go and find out who this Raikwa is." They were all surprised. What is the king talking? "Go, there is a person greater than me." a person called Raikwa, who has a cart with him. Go and find out. The messengers, the attendants of the king ran in all quarters of his kingdom to every town and every city and found nobody of that name. They came disappointed and told the king, Your Highness, we cannot find any such person in any town or city in your country. Foolish ones, do you find great ones in towns and cities? Find them where they are to be searched for. Then they again went to the corners, some villages, and everywhere they went and found one person sitting alone with a cart, careless in his look, as if he bothered about nothing. These messengers of the king prostrated themselves before Raikwa and said, Are you Raikwa? Oh yes, they say like that. They ran back and said, Yeah, if you have found him, he is there. The king went with large gifts, gold, silver, cattle and whatnot, offered very valuable things and placed them before this master and requested, Please, 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 instruct me in that knowledge by which you are absorbing everything into yourself. Oh, you want to purchase knowledge by these gifts? Go away from here, useless one, go, get away. He showed him off. You want to buy knowledge from me. The story goes elaborately and saying that the king again came with larger gifts, which somehow or other seems to have satisfied the sage, and the king was initiated into this great mystery called Samvarga Vidya. What does this mean? Every one of us knows that we are pulled towards the objects of sense. But we cannot pull anything to our own selves. The objects seem to be stronger than our own selves. It is a shame upon every sensuous person who seems to be controlled by the character and the contour of the objects, and he runs after them as if he is a slave, servant of the objects of the world. Where is freedom that we boast of when we are utter servants of the demands of the sense organs? And we run like servants towards the objects who seem to be singing a tune to which we have to dance perpetually till our death. But is there a way of not becoming servants of the objects of the world and converting the objects into our own servants? You are now the servant of the world, but can the world become your servant? Is it possible? The world absorbs you into itself, which is the sorry state of affairs for every human individual. Now, can anyone absorb the world into himself? If this could be done, self-control has reached its pinnacle. There would be no object left afterwards if success can be achieved in this art of peculiar meditation known as Samvarga Vidya. Nothing can attract you afterwards, because the attracting things have become part of your being because of the force that you have exerted upon them, and they have merged in you. They have become your servants. They are at your feet. In another context, the same Upanishad tells us, Sarva disho bali masmai haranti sarvam asmiti upasita tadvratam tadvratam. Here is a great tapas for you. Meditate that the thing that pulls you has got united with you by the power of your abstracting power, controlling will and reabsorbing power which you are exercising in your meditation. The meditational technique is so crypt that the Upanishads will not tell us any detail about it. It merely says initiation was given into the absorbing technique of meditation. This technique seems to be something like this. The mind in its usual operations visualizes an object. It may be one thing or two things or many things or the whole world itself as a large mass of material placed in front of itself, out of which it can select anything that it needs and fulfill its requirements and reach a state of enjoyment. Actually, the word enjoyment is a very intriguing term. What happens to us when we enjoy things so called? From where does the joy arise? It does not arise from anything. This is what we will realize on a careful scrutiny of this entire matter. Consciousness which is operating through the mind and the sense organs moves out of itself in the direction of spatio-temporal objects when there is a desire for anything. When there is the feeling that the object desired for is near, spatially, the agony of not having that object diminishes in its intensity because of the feeling of a proximity of the object. And when there is the feeling that it is possessed already and it is under one's control, the consciousness that has moved out of its own location through the mind and the senses reverts to its own source. Then the self-consciousness, which was artificially and unfortunately diverted to a location out of itself in external space and time, stations itself in itself. This is called establishment of self in the self. Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. The seer establishes himself in himself. The moment this happens, when the consciousness withdraws itself spontaneously and lodges itself in its own root, because of the feeling that there is no need further to go outside towards the objects, having obtained them, a splash of sattva guna manifests itself within us, while rajas and tamas were active during the operation of a desire. Sattva is like a mirror, like a clean glass through which the Atman within manifests itself, flashes forth like a bright light, And as the Atman, which is existence and consciousness, is also bliss, the bliss of the Atman manifests itself immediately like a ray of lightning, and we feel as if we are enjoying the object, while actually the object has brought nothing. It has only brought the sorrow of a possible bereavement that is to take place in the near future, and many other factors of agony of which no further explanation is necessary. Samvarga Vidya, the art of the absorbing activity in meditation, is the centering of consciousness in everything in the world, not regarding it as an object to be cognized or perceived by the sense organs, but as a phase of consciousness itself. This again can be illustrated by a small common sense observation in our daily life. When I look at you, you are an object. But when you look at me, I am an object. But neither of us is an object. There is a self-consciousness in me and there is a self-consciousness in every individual. There is a unitary self-affirmative principle in every object, even an insect and a particle of sand. Thus, the assertion that something is an object that can be possessed and enjoyed is an erroneous thought arising in the mind due to thinking that things are located in outward space and time, forgetting the fact that everything, whether it is in space and time or not, has its own self-affirmative principle of selfhood. Therefore, every object also is a self for itself. Everything in the world has a self-respect as much as you have towards yourself. Even an ant has a self-respect of its own, it wouldn't like to be interfered with. Everything has its own cohesive feature of self-maintenance. Even an atom, though we think wrongly that it has no awareness of itself. This meditation is directed in the manner of converting every objectivity in the objects into a subjectivity which is their real nature. When you look at anything, when you even think of something, person or any object, you begin to visualize the self in that and free it from the outer feature of name and form which have been invested upon it on account of their apparent location in outward space and time. This affirmation of the selfhood or the self-identical nature of everything in the world by the meditating consciousness creates a peculiar atmosphere around. Self rushes into the self, while objects and the contemplating sense organs have a false relationship between them. The self has a true relationship with another self apparently located in a body of an individual. The world rushes into you because you contemplate it as a large self, or rather your own higher self. This perhaps is the hidden import of the great dictum in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Uddhared Atman Atmanam. Natmanam avasadhet atmeva hyatmano bandhu atmaiva ripuratmana. The world is your friend and also your enemy under different conditions. God himself is a friend and also a disposer of all that you want if you do not place him in the proper context. All things in the world are possessed of a self, the universal self being present in all things, God himself being immanent in every object. In meditation, what are you supposed to do in this particular application of the art? Here the will requires a proper intensity of its own. A weak-minded person cannot do this meditation because of the old habit of thinking that everything is outside. That nothing is really outside, but everything is a self of its own self. And therefore, outsideness cannot be attributed to self, cannot be imagined by your mind easily. Because the trick of the mind is such that even if you assume that there is a self in the so-called externality of things, you will by old habit imagine that the self is outside you. It will look like something externally placed in space and time. Self cannot be placed in space, just as you yourself cannot be placed outside yourself. So nothing can be placed outside itself. As you cannot place yourself outside yourself. Hard is this to digest, because this is not the way in which we think in the world. If everything has a self of its own, nothing is outside anyone. If nothing is outside anyone, where is it? It cannot be said to be inside also, because the idea of inside arises due to the fact of there being something outside. If the self is not outside, it is not also inside. It is just what it is. The contemplation exercised in this manner vigorously, with utter sincerity, and with the conviction that it shall succeed. And it is not merely an experimentation that you are engaged in. You will find the world becoming friendly with you. You need not run to things. Things will run to you. You become the center of gravity for all the forces of life. You are the gravitational center of the things so-called apparently located outside. They will gravitate towards you. You become a world figure in one instant. World figure, not in the sense of a political individual who is known as a great man through the newspapers, but a world individual in the sense of a being who has absorbed the world into himself and contemplates perpetually only this fact, and no other thought arises in his mind. The Upanishad says, such was the power of this Raikwa, that if anybody did any good deed, the credit of it will go to him. It is something like saying, if you do some charity, the merit of it I will get. What is this? How is it possible to explain this phenomenon? Just as the larger figure, says the Upanishad, includes all the lower figures, the larger self includes all the lower selves. And if anything is done, meritorious deed or charitable act by any smaller self, the credit of it will go to the higher godly self, which is the meditating consciousness. You yourself are that godly self. Wondrous meditation. Samvarga Vidya, if anyone can sincerely take to it, one can be sure that the world, what does the Upanishad say here? Tasya lokaha sa'u loka eva. The world is his possession. No, not merely that. He himself is the world. Then where is the question of self-control? Here is, as I mentioned earlier, a glorious method of controlling the sense organs. The senses melt down completely into the selfhood out of which they have arisen. And bliss of an uncanny, unwearied nature will arise from oneself. You will always be happy, smiling, and a radiance will be seen emanating from your face. You will be a giver of boons automatically without uttering a single word, and your presence will be a blessing. Such is the power of this great Samvarga Vidya, beautifully described to us in this illustration in the Chandogya Upanishad. So try to be like this great master, poverty stricken, nothing, looking outwardly as a non-entity with a poor cart that he had to pull, but a world figure at whose command the earth will shake and tremble. Such was the benediction that this Vidya bestowed upon this great master, which will be the blessing of everyone else also who takes to this practice. Hari Om Tat Sat.